Okay, everybody, here's our lesson on domain and range, and let's go ahead and just get right into it and answer this question. Now, this is a question that we kind of went over in class, but I just want to kind of reiterate how to find the domain and the range, and we're really going to kind of focus mostly just on the domain. So let's go ahead and just get started here with the main question, which is, how do you find the domain? So ask yourself a series of questions. Now, one of the first questions you want to ask yourself is a constraint question, which is there any number that cannot be substituted for the value of x? What can x not be? I know it's kind of a weird way to phrase a question, but that's what you want to basically ask yourself. What can x not be? So, for instance, in this equation right here, we have that function of x. The function of x is equal to 3 times x plus 8. And in this particular function, x could be absolutely anything. It could be 0, it can be 1, it can be radical, it could be anything. In this instance, we can say that the function of x is all real numbers. From negative infinity to positive infinity. It's basically all reals. That's what it's all about. Another question you want to ask yourself is it a linear function? If so, its domain is all reals again. Okay, so this is just one of many examples of a linear function. This definitely passes the vertical line test. It's a linear function. This would be a linear function. A vertical line, however, would not be a linear function because it does not pass a vertical line test. But any kind of line, horizontal, diagonal, steep slope, not so steep slope, that will be a linear function. Its domain will be everything. The x values are basically infinite. This line goes on forever and ever and ever, and therefore your domain values are going to be infinite x values. Another question you might want to ask yourself is it a polynomial function? If so, its domain is, again, same thing here, all real numbers. Negative infinity all the way to positive infinity, everything. So this is an example of, right here, this is an example of a polynomial function. It's not linear, so if it's not linear, it's probably going to be a polynomial function. And this passes the vertical line test, obviously. And that's how you do it. Another question to ask yourself is if it's a rational function or not. If so, set the expression in the denominator equal to 0. What you get for x is not, I repeat, is not in the domain. So rational function, what that basically means is that it's a ratio. What's a ratio? A fraction. Okay, so there you go, ratios and rational. So it's a fraction, a rational expression basically. And you should zero in on that denominator. Now I know I'm already showing you the answer here, but that's what it is. The value of x can be everything except negative 5. Because negative 5 makes the denominator, negative 5 makes the denominator 0. You get negative 15 plus 8 over 0. And that's not good. You cannot have that. That's one of the 10 commandments of math. Thou shalt not divide by 0. Another question you might want to ask yourself is the question, is it a square root function? If so, set up an inequality so that the root is greater than or equal to 0. We want it to be greater than or equal to 0 because we don't want a negative number underneath the radical. If you have a negative number, then you're dealing with imaginary numbers. And imaginary numbers are irrational. We don't want to have that. So here is an example of a square root function. And let's go ahead and look at the 4c plus 5 part that is inside the radical. So what we're going to do is we're going to make 4c plus 5 greater than or equal to 0. And just solve it. Solve for c. So, just get the 5 over on the other side. It becomes negative 5 when we move it over there. And then divide by 4. And you get c is greater than or equal to negative 5/4. So there you have it. So we want all values of c, we want all those values of c to be greater than or equal to negative 5/4. If they're not greater than that, if they're not greater than negative 5/4, then that function is going to be undefined. So that does it on how to find the domain.